Whitewashed homes, sun-kissed beaches, dark blue skies. That's one vision of Greece. The other, just as accurate, is stagnation, unpaid wages, debt. We were told time and time again over many years that the measures put in place to solve the Greek debt crisis were working. And yet here we are again, the best part of a decade later, with warnings from the IMF, no less, that Greece's debts are on an explosive path. Yianis Varoufakis, the former Greek finance minister and architect of the vision for a new Greece outside the Eurozone, joins me now in the studio. And on the line we have Jochen Andritzky, who's the General Secretary of the German Council of Economic Experts. Those are senior economists appointed by the government. And I wonder if I can start with you, Mr. Andritzky. Good morning. There is no doubt now, surely, that the response to the Greek debt crisis has failed.
Good morning, Mr. President. Glad to be on the program. Well, I mean, the concerns about Greece's debt has been, lingering for a very long time. And Greece has done a fair bit of adjustment, which put it actually on a quite good path. Plus, the terms of the debt are actually so low that it's actually in many regards lower than many other euro areas have in terms of the effective interest rates paid or the annual debt service that is due.
And if I may, I mean, economists love to talk figures. They love to talk the macro picture. But if you look at the micro picture, if you look at the lives of Greeks, they are getting worse by the day. They continue to get worse. I remember sitting in countless briefings in Brussels back in 2011, 2012, 2013, where senior officials insisted time and time again that it was working, that it would work, and yet it hasn't worked, has it?
Well, the adjustment has been unusually harsh. But also the economy has unusual rigidity, so the adjustment takes just a very long time with a big burden in terms of unemployment and falling incomes. So it just highlights the need that a lot needs to be done to turn around this economy within the euro area. And I think on that, Greece has made some progress, but I mean, very important reforms, vested interests, the pension system, tax administrations, not much has been achieved there. These areas have been spared from the reforms so far.
Yianis Varoufakis, former Greek finance minister, I mean, that is the point that the critics make towards Greece time and time again, isn't it? That, yes, reforms have been adhered to, some of them, but not all of them, and that's the problem.
Well, the problem is that the country in desperate need of reform, firstly, has been put on a fiscal path which makes our everyday life unsustainable in Greece. And
but there is also a problem, if I may interrupt, there is also a problem that the reforms have not been put in place in the way that the IMF and the European Commission envisaged. That the Greek government hasn't pushed through everything it is meant to do, and they would argue, and do argue, that that is why Greece is still in the state it's in.
Well, they're not actually arguing that, are they now? The IMF has done its mea culpa a number of times. I can tell you from personal experience that the German finance minister agrees with the proposition I shall put to you right now, that no Greek government, however reformist it might be, can sustain the current debt obligations of Greece or reform Greece. Look, the problem is that a country in desperate need of reform has been made unreformable by unsustainable macroeconomic policies and by a program of reform which it's like a pyramid that is upside down. Let me put it very succinctly. Instead of attacking the worst cases of corruption and of oligarchic rent-seeking, for 6 years now, the troika of creditors has been after the little people, the small pharmacists, the very poor pensioners, instead of going for the oligarchy and going for the triangle of sin comprising the media, procurement, and, of course, the banking sector.
And Jochen Andritzky in Germany, what's fascinating about this is we're having the same conversation that's been had over 6 years and the sort of conversation that was going on 5-6 years ago, time and time again. Are we back at a stage where the euro's future is in doubt because Greece's future is in doubt?
No, I don't believe that. I don't believe so. I mean, key to Greece reforms as anywhere else is that the country itself has the ownership of the program and basically agrees to the principle that a country needs to become more competitive in order to be stable within the euro area. And I just don't see that the government does these right things, that put the priorities on the right points.
But again, I put it to you that we're hearing the same arguments we've heard time and time again. The whole system is in a rut here. And presumably the reality of this is that you in Germany, in other parts of the EU as well, and others, you need to stay on the same path because you've made a political decision that this is the way forward, and you don't want to change the politics of this. Angela Merkel could not see and would not want to see Germany having to pay even more to Greece at the moment, especially ahead of her election.
No, again, the program is based on the principle that loans are given in return for reforms. So what I think we should talk about is not just debt relief or the fiscal targets, but which reforms does Greece need and which fiscal space it needs for those reforms. But basically sustaining a system in which there's like annual transfers to a certain country of exactly that dimension that Greece needs is just very hard to stomach for any other democratically elected government in the euro area. It's basically paying for very high, the pension deficit in Greece is 4 times the average of the euro area.
And again, I say we're hearing the same arguments time and time again. Yianis Varoufakis, very briefly, what is the way out of this? Should Greece leave the euro now?
Look, we must come to terms with reality. The tragedy was in 2010 that a bankrupt country was given a huge loan, not to save it, but in order to cynically transfer huge banking losses from the books of the Franco-German banks onto the shoulders of the weakest taxpayers in Europe. It's not working. It is like giving a credit card to a bankrupt entity in order to keep paying its debt and then giving another credit card, another credit card. As long as you're doing that, Greece is unreformable. And that, however, I must say, is an indictment on the whole functioning of the Eurozone.
Yianis Varoufakis and Jochen Andritzky, thank you both very much.